This is Hades 2, an upcoming title from Supergiant Games that recently launched in early access on PC. The company initially held a technical test in late April and casually announced that the early access release would follow in May, but they didn't commit to a date. We don't know if the release date was intentionally kept vague, but it certainly helped in building buzz around the game, with fans of the first game speculating daily that today would be the early access launch. And then the developers shadow dropped the early access version on May 6th without any fuss. They simply launched the game and sent out a message across all their social channels. That was it. On the first day, more than 1 lakh people played the game simultaneously, and we don't know the exact sales figures for the day. Shortly after this happened, another early access game that was due to be released in the same week, The Rogue Prince of Persia, was delayed, with the developer Evil Empire admitting that the surprise launch of Hades 2 would impact their launch, since both games belong to a similar genre. So they felt it was in their best interest to delay their launch to later in the month so that fans could get enough time to enjoy both games. Although Evil Empire did this to protect their launch day sales, it was still kind of a feel-good story during a week that saw the gaming community deal with the backlash of Helldivers 2 account linking issues and the closure of multiple game studios by Xbox. This story was a reminder that it is the smaller games and studios that continue to keep the industry chugging along and keep it from completely turning into a market driven by sales figures and balance sheets. Hades 2 and The Rogue Prince of Persia are the perfect candidates in this discussion about indie games. Hades 2 is made by Supergiant Games, who is perhaps one of the best examples of a studio that makes indie games. At the time of recording, Supergiant Games isn't owned by a larger gaming company, and neither does it use a publisher to bring its games to the market. It is truly independent, and this spirit usually shows in their game development process. They take several years to make the games that they want without rushing the process, and all their games are quite fun to play because they keep trying something new with each game. In fact, Hades 2 is the first sequel that the studio has produced in 15 years, and before this, each of their games explored a different concept. In any case, a product made by Supergiant Games is indisputably considered an indie game. Now, let us take a look at The Rogue Prince of Persia. As soon as this game was revealed, questions were raised as to whether it could really be considered an indie game for two reasons. One, the game uses a licensed character, the Prince of Persia, which has appeared in multiple AAA games in the past. Two, the game is published by Ubisoft, a large company that usually publishes AAA games and owns the license to the Prince of Persia brand. However, the game itself is developed by Evil Empire, an independent game studio based in France. But since Ubisoft is publishing the game and it belongs to such an established franchise, many people feel this shouldn't be categorized as an indie game. We don't know how much influence Ubisoft has had on the production of the game, despite whatever claims the developer may have made publicly. This raises the question on whether we should categorize games as indie only when the studios that make them have produced them without any external influence. This is difficult since a lot of indie games are published by external studios, which provide funding and other support that helps the games come out to the market. And in return, they do have some sort of influence on the game's production. Then, should games be categorized as indie only based on their scope and art direction? Dave the Diver looks every bit like an indie game, but it is entirely funded by Nexon, a large South Korean company whose internal team called Mint Rocket developed this game. It even got nominated for a couple of indie game awards, and the same question was raised back then. How is a game developed by a large studio considered to be indie? Now comes the opinion part of this video. I feel that we need to lose the tags AAA and indie. These tags are no longer relevant today. In 2020 at the Game Awards, the first Hades game competed with The Last of Us Part 2 for the Game of the Year award. It eventually lost, but that nomination was proof that a game is a game and it should be judged only on that basis and not based on what tag has been allotted to it by the publisher or a platform holder. In 2024, the most played games so far have been titles like Palworld, Helldivers 2, Balatro, and now Hades 2. All of these can hardly be considered to be large games, although Helldivers 2 is probably close to what we call a AA game, another tag that makes little sense. Players are now smart enough to know the different kinds of games available on the market, and they naturally gravitate towards the kind of games they want to play. Someone who likes wholesome, cozy games will be less likely to be interested in an announcement for the latest Call of Duty game, and vice versa. We already have a good indicator of what to expect from a game by looking at its price tag. Hades 2 is currently selling at $30, which is less than half of what the standard AAA game sells for these days. And that's because it doesn't offer the same production values as a $70 game. That doesn't mean you get any less of a gaming experience by playing a $30 game. It is entirely your choice. What's important is that you don't really need to tag these games as indie or AAA anymore. With the traditional AAA market becoming highly unstable, it is these smaller games that will continue to keep the industry afloat and continue to entertain audiences at a much lower price. So it is either time to find a better term to describe these games or get rid of the tags altogether. Thanks for watching and see you in the next episode.